Speaking of talking with, we will have a significant amount of time at the end of the webinar to answer any questions that you may have. So we would ask that you guys hold your questions to the end. Right now, the best way to get that in is just chat it to me. The chat function is actually below, again, in the same kind of bar where that mute symbol was. And if you go ahead and click on that, you'll see ability to submit a question to me. If you are really keen and a question inspires you or comes to you while we're going through the webinar, please just go ahead and send it off to me before you forget, or you can hold it to the end and we will accept all questions via writing in chat. So feel free to test that out too if you want to. I will respond if I receive anything. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was if you are interested or can't see the screen or the presentation as well as you would like, in the upper right-hand corner, there is a little tiny button that says view. If you click that, you can toggle around to the different views that are available, and it only affects your screen. So it's whatever your preference is. So feel free to try that out if you want to focus more on the content or on people speaking. All right. On that note, we're at 10:02 and we've got more than a handful of participants, but I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Trenton. Trenton.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for the introduction and warm up. On behalf of the Workforce Innovation team, I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is the final one for the Workforce Innovation Grant Program before the application deadline here coming up. And in round one, we had a lot of great interest in an overwhelming number of applications that came in that really culminated in 12 great programs that we were excited to award. And we're really excited to hear about the great programs that all of you are looking to propose in the round two applications coming up here. So we look forward to everything that you're going to be sharing with us in the coming weeks, and maybe you already have. Joining me on today's webinar and co-presenting will be a colleague of mine, Ashley, from the Department of Administration. She'll be walking through some specific areas relative to the application form online to help familiarize you with that. But then in addition, we also have a couple other colleagues, both from our partners at Department of Workforce Development, Danielle and Ray from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation as well. Ray, who you may recall from the previous webinars. They won't be presenting, but they'll be online in case there's any questions that they're particularly to answer. In terms of the agenda for today's webinar, we do know from the signups that there's a strong mix of experience levels with the Workforce Innovation Grant Program, including some who are, several who are quite new to the program and maybe didn't take part in the early webinars, and then some who submitted applications in the first round and are looking to submit a second round application as well. With that mix, we do have a strong mix in our agenda as well, including an overview of the Workforce Innovation Grant Program to really speak to what are the core needs and what are the goals and objectives of the program, but then also looking specifically at some of the key elements of the program and some recent updates that we want to share with you. And then we'll go into an overview of where to find the materials and the applications, which will include a walkthrough of our respective Economic Development Corporation website and the DOA website, including the DocuSign application. And then we'll close it out with just a simple overview of the application review process. And then for those who are awarded in round two, what that reporting function will look like, or what it will entail ultimately, before opening it up to some questions and answers at the end that you might have. So just a real quick high-level overview of what the purpose of the Workforce Innovation Grant Program is designed to accomplish. From our end, we're looking to support collaborative and innovative plans that create family-sustaining careers. And those two words, collaborative and innovative, are really important pieces to what we believe are the successful pieces of the round one applicants that did receive awards. But we're also looking to assist our regional partners with funding their workforce development efforts, because we recognize that while there is a lot of similarity around the different regions of the state, there are unique areas that make your workforce challenges specific to your region. So we understand that there's an importance in working with our regional partners. In that third part, going to the collaboration pieces, we want to make sure that we're collaborating with you on the local level, but you're also collaborating with your partners that you work with regularly to really develop the best programs that can lead to lasting change in the workforce area. And then for yourselves, as applicants, the key things that we want you to take away from this program are, as you're presenting your solutions and in the application, we want you to present evidence-based solutions that are proportional to the pandemic. So it's not just enough to have a workforce challenge, but because this goes back to the Department of Treasury and ARPA guidelines, we want to make sure that we're speaking to the fact that this is a solution for a pandemic-related challenge in your area. And lastly, considering and articulating how that proposed solution is going to support disproportionately impacted communities in your area as a result of the health emergency. In terms of eligible projects, we really want you to start with identifying what is the most pressing workforce challenge that's been either caused by or exacerbated by the pandemic. And really start with that idea first. Defining the challenge is the most important piece, but then how do we want to define and design our program around that challenge with innovative solutions that can help you address it and meet the needs that your region has. Those are really what define what eligible projects. If you can define that for your project, then that will meet most of the eligibility needs. In terms of ineligible projects, or ineligible costs, there are a number of costs that we have covered in our FAQs as well as in the past webinars. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we do want to make sure that we touch on the fact that we are bound by ARPA guidelines through the Department of Treasury in terms of what is allowable and what isn't. And that includes some of the more common ones would be fees for developing your application. Also, any administrative or programming costs for programs or operations that were already in place before the pandemic. If those are already funded by existing grant dollars or other programming funding.
Did Megan's shoes come yesterday? Was there a shipment yesterday?
Could I just ask everybody to go ahead and mute themselves unless you're actively speaking? Thank you. Sorry about that, Trenton.
No worries. But as I was saying, if you do have existing funding or programming that's already in place, the program funding for the workforce innovation grants cannot be used to replace that. But we are, and that kind of goes back to this idea of new and innovative programs that we're designing, that this program is designed to work for. And again, this is covered in more detail in the FAQs and also in the final rule from the ARPA guidelines. A few recent updates that I'd like to make sure we touch on. I want to spend a little time on this here today. Many of you who have already started an application process on the DOA website, maybe you should have received an email yesterday. If you haven't already started that application process and we don't have your application on file, then I wanted to make sure we touch on this today. These are all changes that have occurred this week. And the first one we want to touch on is that we've decided to move the deadline date back from Friday the 15th to Monday, April 18th. And this is out of respect for the fact that there's two holidays. We have Good Friday and Passover on Friday the 15th. And we recognize that families may be traveling and spending time with their family. So we want to make sure that we allow an extra day for you to get your application submitted on Monday the 18th, again at 5 p.m. that day. That it won't impact when the awards are announced. That'll still be in the summer of 2022 here coming up. But we do want to make sure we're communicating this as you're making your plans for your application. One difference for round 2 compared to round 1 is for WARN notices. In round 1, we previously looked back 2 years. And originally for round 2, we had updated that to January 1st of 2020. However, in round 2, anyone who has a WARN notice, we're only going to be looking back till January 1st of 2021, so just a little over a year. And we did that because we recognized that at the start of the pandemic, many organizations had to make temporary changes that may have included a WARN notice or layoff notice in early 2020, but have since brought back their operations and you're back up to speed. So we don't want that to be a reason why you're not able to apply for a pandemic-related grant this year. So please make note of that. One thing I would like to add to this point, we aren't able to update the live application that maybe some of you have already started to complete and or will be starting to complete in the next days here. So you will see both the old application deadline date of April 15th, as well as the WARN notice attestation of January 1st of 2020. While those have been updated online and are part of our review process, you won't see them updated on the online application. However, we have updated them in the supporting documents, including our convenience copy. Another update, as I mentioned, all of the documents have been updated to reflect the updated deadline date. But we've also, I want to make a call out here to a few new questions we've added to our FAQ document on the WEDC program page. And that's because there are sometimes questions that come in that are new or we just feel rise to the need of being answered at a higher level so that everyone has access to those answers as they come along. And so as you're looking to do your application process here coming up, or if you're just going to be continuing your application, please make sure you're downloading the most recent documents on our website so that you have access to this new information. And then the fourth bullet on this page here is application-specific recommendations. And these are a couple pieces that have come up just with the added number of applications we've already started receiving. There's been a couple of very rare anomalies that we've been made aware of in the application that we just wanted to call to your attention. And again, they're very rare, but in the event that they do impact you, we want to make sure that you're aware of these altered, these ways to work around the challenge. So the first one is if your FEIN number, your Federal Employee Identification Number, starts with a 0, it's a 9-digit number with a hyphen in it. And if that happens to start with a 0 at the very first number, please enter it into the form anyway, but you'll likely receive an error message at that time when you go to submit, and you'll be asked to alter the number. At that time, you can remove the 0 that starts your FEIN number, and it will accept the form. We've tested that out and verified it. And please know that even though it's an 8-digit number, we're aware of this very rare glitch, and we'll take that into account as we're doing the review process. So it won't cause you to be declined because your EIN number is listed as a 8-digit. But again, I do want to caution, if you do enter a number that starts with a 1 through 9, you will need to make sure that that is entered as a 9-digit number, as this is just a rare exception if they start with 0. And lastly, program counties field on page 1 of the application process. For most people, this is not a factor, but if you're serving with your program that you're proposing, if it's serving a large number of counties, or maybe just longer county names, you might reach the maximum character count for that field. And in that case, we would ask you just to identify the region for the counties that you're serving in that county's field. For example, it could be south, the greater Madison area in south central Wisconsin, or the greater Eau Claire area in northwest Wisconsin, etc. But then define that region more specifically, including the county names in section 2, the project summary statement. And it's important that we do have all of the county names included as part of the scoring process, and noting which counties will be served by your program. In terms of important dates for round 2, this list is getting shorter here as we progress through the Workforce Innovation Grant Program. Today, obviously, we're doing the webinar, but coming up, the next submission, or the next key date, is the submission deadline, which is 5 p.m. on Monday, April 18th, as we mentioned. And we strongly encourage that applicants do get their applications in as soon as possible. We do know that we've received several already from a number of applicants, and we appreciate you for filling those out early. We found both on our end and also for applicants who are submitting their applications online, it's best not to submit them all on the last day, just because you'll be doing yourself a favor if you're able to submit it early, in making sure that you're able to get all of your necessary signatures, have all of the supporting documents that you have, and narratives completed and filled out appropriately, so that you're not missing any key information for the application deadline. And then the second piece, as I mentioned earlier, the award announcements will be happening in the early summer of 2022. We haven't defined the exact date, or more specifically defined it in terms of late June or early June, but we do anticipate sometime in the summer of 2022, we will make those announcements following a very robust review and scoring process of the applications we receive. And just to follow up, one of the questions we've received from time to time is, how will we be notified of our application status? And that is, when we do make the determination for our grant award winners, all of the applications we receive will receive an email to the lead applicant email address that lets them know of their award status, whether it was or wasn't awarded, and then we'll also eventually share over a link with the press release announcing the award winners who did receive a grant in round 2. With that said, I'd like to take a little time to go through our WEDC webpage for the Workforce Innovation Grant Program. And so I'm going to escape out of the deck here for a moment and pull up our website. And I'm just going to ask Rachel, are you able to see the website in full screen?
Correct.
Wonderful. So on the website here, and many of you have probably already come to this, I would imagine, just as part of the nature of the program, but there's such a wealth of great information that's available on this website, or this web page specifically, that we just wanted to make sure we're calling it out now while everyone's together, as it really helps answer any questions that you might have as you're filling out your application form. Especially, I want to call your attention to the right-hand side with all these call outs. This is where you'll find most of the supporting documents and information that'll be relevant to your application. The first link here on the top is a link to the Department of Administration webpage for the program. This doesn't open up the application itself, but it takes you to the page where you'll find that link at, along with some additional links and supporting documents. The second link here is for the grant program guide. And this guide it's a high-level overview describing the Workforce Innovation Grant Program and purpose, eligibility, and it walks you through very comprehensively the information that you'll need to know for preparing your application and submitting it. The next piece here is the application checklist and instructions. And when I turn this over to Ashley here shortly, she'll go through this in more detail. But this is one piece, one document that we'd highly recommend that you have available as you're completing your application online, just because it truly follows the application through and through each section with tips and recommendations for how to address any questions, how to make sure you're completing it thoroughly as well. And so again, make sure that you do have this available as you're completing your application. This next one here is, it's not the actual application itself, but it's what we call a convenience copy of the application. So it's a PDF that mirrors what you'll see online, that allows you to then share it with your partners, maybe take notes on it for yourself as you're forming your narratives for the different responses. You can make sure that you can keep this available as well as a resource and note-taking piece for yourself as you're completing that application. The rubric here is something that was not included as part of round one in terms of the supporting documents, but this is something that we feel is really helpful for you as you're drafting your application narratives, to make sure that you understand how the applications will be scored in terms of each of the 6 sections that are included. In particular, there is some weighting, which I'll go through a little bit later, but each of the sections is weighted slightly differently to put emphasis on ones that we feel are most important in defining a successful program for the Workforce Innovation Grant. And this goes through that in detail for each of those sections. And lastly, and certainly not least, is our frequently asked questions document. And this is throughout the course of the Workforce Innovation Grant program. This has kind of been a living, breathing document that we've updated regularly to make sure we're addressing the key needs that happen at each phase in the application process. And the document is structured that way accordingly to make sure that we're addressing needs and help you find questions that you may have as you're submitting your application. And as I mentioned earlier, this document was just updated about 3 days ago, as were many of these others. So please, if you have downloaded them already prior to, say, Tuesday of this week, then we do encourage you to re-download the most recent copies, just so that you're not confused by seeing an April 15th deadline date or any other information that may have already been updated. So with that, I'll click through on this first link here at the top to take us through to the Department of Administration website. So this is the web page for the Workforce Innovation Grant Program, as you will land on it from our website. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Ashley, from the Department of Administration, to then walk us through the application process and where to find materials on this website.
Good morning, everyone. So I am picking up right where Trenton left off here on the Workforce Innovation page for the WEDC site. And again, we're going to click through here to the DOA page. And Trenton did a really good job of just walking you through some of the resources that were available on the WEDC page. So you see that the DOA page is basically just the application materials and instructions. So I'm going to click through here. You can get to this also on the WEDC page on the Apply Now links at the top and bottom of the page. So this will take you straight to the instructions. And if you didn't get a chance to read through the application guide, before you complete your application, I would strongly encourage that you do. There's a lot of really good information in there about eligible costs, a lot of additional resources that might be helpful for you in helping to craft your application in the best way possible. In addition to that, I would strongly recommend that everybody also read through these instructions. We've made a number of updates quite recently and a number of updates from the previous round, a lot of which I think make things a lot easier for applicants, but we're also always willing to hear some feedback. And as you've noticed, we do make updates as we see any additional troubleshooting issues come through. So the application is hosted on DocuSign, which is you applied in round one. You should be somewhat familiar with already. This first page right here has the application link available here. Runs through that you also need your attachment A letters of commitment, which you'll be attaching in the application. And then if you meet specific requirements, which we'll go through later, the DOA 3027, which we'll talk about in a second. Also available on this page is the convenience copy link. So you don't have to go back and forth between the WEDC website and this page. You can just come to this document and have most things available for you right here. So with that, I'm going to actually open up the application form in a separate tab, and I will pull that up on the other side of the screen here. So give me 1 second while this loads.
And while
Okay.
she's doing that, you can also follow along by clicking on the DOA application portal that I put in chat. Sorry, take it away, Ashley.
Yes. So, of course, I can't get my window to go the way I want it right now, but give me 1 second. I would strongly recommend that you have the application instructions open while you are filling out the application. So let's start at the beginning here. So this is the application form, and you know that because on the top here, of course, in really tiny letters that we cannot change, it says application form. I'll make this distinction right now. If you have an organization that requires additional sign off, besides the person who is completing the form, there are 2 fields here. The first field is for the person who is filling out the form. Ideally, it will be you. You, the person that is actually typing in the name, is filling out the form. So I'm going to actually enter in here our email address for the WEDC website. And it is really important that you make sure that the email address is correct here and the name is correct here as you're entering these in. We cannot make changes on your behalf if you make an error in typing in the email or the name on this page. So this is a really important page to get things started. Again, only if your organization requires an additional authorized representative should you put something in this second field. We do not recommend that you duplicate names anywhere on this first page. So do not put this name of the same person as the grant preparer in this field, because we have had issues of people missing their application because they did not see the second email that came through to them. So do not duplicate names on this page. If you have additional people whom you'd like to send a copy to, you may put 2 additional names in these bottom fields. This is for people such as your finance person, your board president, if they've delegated authority to you, one of your partners or a couple of your partners. They'll receive a copy when the application is submitted as well, but you can also forward on that email that you received to anybody whom you'd like. You'll notice there's only 2 fields here. You might have more. Unfortunately, we can't accommodate any more than 2 fields at this time. So just really prioritize whomever you'd like to be notified that the application has been submitted in these last 2 fields. And this is the same from last time. Don't change this field. This ensures that we get an extra copy in the Workforce Innovation email for our records as well. Again, strongly encourage you to double check all the emails that you have entered in here, that the name is correct, that the email is correct before you hit begin signing, because we cannot make any changes on your behalf after you hit that begin signing. So that covers all of the instruction on page 1 and page 2. Page 3 of the instructions, as this is loading, will bring you to the opening page of either the 3027 or this application document. You may be prompted to agree to electronic records and signatures. You click that box here. You'll hit continue if you want to keep moving through the application at this point. But I also want to point out that at any time during the application process, and I strongly encourage that you do this right when you open the application, so you get this link right away and you don't have the application timeout on you, or your internet doesn't fail, and all multiple things that can happen, you know, when you're working on something online. Click this finish later option. This is going to automatically send you an email to the email that you included as the grant preparer on this page here. So if I hit save and close, it's going to take me back to the Department of Administration homepage. I'm actually going to have to open this again to resubmit it since I put it as WEDC, but you should receive an email then that looks something like this that says review and sign document. You click on that review and sign document, it's going to take you right back into the application. From that page, and you will be back at this DocuSign page from there. So I'm just reopening that application from the finish later option. And again, you can do that at any point in time. So if you're working on this multiple times, say you want to break for lunch, you're coming back later, say you want to break for the day, you come back later, you can hit this link multiple times for the finish later to receive a link at any time when you're working on this document. And we're going to actually skip ahead on the instructions because this is covering filling out and submitting either document here, but we're going to run right into page 5, which talks specifically about the application document here. So I would strongly encourage you to fill out as much information as you can on pages 1 and 2 of the application, because some of these contain trigger fields. So for example, if I select government agency on this page, it's showing that I do not need to enter a DFI or EIN, but if I hit a nonprofit agency, those fields populate. So because there are slightly different needs for certain applicants, some of these fields will trigger other fields as you go through the application. This is one, first, please select applicant type, and I'll try to hit on the other fields as we go through. Project name is important. Make a distinction between, if you are submitting multiple products, make a distinction between those projects. It might help to include, if it's a capital expense, like the project building name, make it descriptive enough so that the reviewers can understand the difference between your projects at a first glance. You'll also select an application category. There is an option for arts, barriers to entry, career pathway, childcare, entrepreneurship, health services, housing, transportation, and other. If you select other, you'll be given a new field to type in your own category here. Make it as descriptive as possible. There are a lot of options to already choose from, so make a best judgment call here. I want to call out for nonprofit entities that the DFI entity ID is available for you to search upon at the DFI website. You should search upon your DFI entity ID to make sure that it is not about to expire as well, because we'll be checking this immediately after the application deadline closes. Trenton covered earlier the EIN issue that we've been having. There's other EIN fields as we go through the form further. And again, the counties question. If you cannot fit all your counties in this line, please create a region and then define this region down here in section 2. And then I want to call out the financial contact information. If you have a specific department that has a finance department, This is your opportunity to call it a different contact name here, call it a different email address. We do need remit information from you. This remit information should be able to receive a paper check if needed, but we will be following up with successful applicants to confirm this information as well. All right, so that's the meat and bones of section 1. Section 2 is, again, this project summary statement. Just be sure that you're reviewing your character counts, that they fit within the space provided. There's quite a few troubleshooting options here, also called out in section 3 about troubleshooting the narrative section if there are issues. We've had very few issues, but this is provided as a courtesy to you, some troubleshooting tips that have worked for others in the past. And Trenton will be going into a little bit more of the scoring, but you'll note that every question that is scored does have the scoring points available, and then the total points for the section or the question that is being called out. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here. And get to the budget. So the budget is intended to be a very high level review of the budget. The program will be following up with successful applicants for a more detailed budget after the programs are awarded. Use your best judgment here. You do have this budget table, and then you also have a budget narrative down here. You'll note that all of the lines are numbered, so you can specifically call out in your narrative a specific line. Say you want to expand upon something that you put up here and you didn't have enough characters to explain really. Best judgment here. You want to convey to the reviewers specifically what you're doing with the money and when you're expending those costs or expending that money. A quick troubleshooting point here is that if you have a space after the end of the number, you may get an error. And I know some people are used to hitting tab perhaps after they enter a number. Sometimes that can cause an error. You should be able to, if you type in this number here, and then all of a sudden you have a space and you click out of that field, it shows an invalid number. Then we'll just go back in here and hit backspace and it goes away, and then you should be able to submit your application from that note. But when you go to hit finish and you have an error like that, it will call out the specific field by outlining it in like a red dot. And as you see here, you'll also get the invalid number on it when you mouse over right here. So that says invalid number, hit backspace, invalid number disappears, you're all good. The totals down here will auto-populate based off of your submissions in each column for wherever you are entering a number. Strongly recommend that you review that number to make sure it makes sense before you hit submit. And then we will move on here from the budget section. Capital expenditure justification. This is a required field, but if you're a tribal government or you're not doing a capital project, please just write not applicable in this field. Unfortunately, we couldn't make it not required in this case. So down here is the next important section is the partnerships and collaborations section. So again, we have an FEIN field in here. If you do have a number that, or an FEIN number that begins with 0, either leave the 0 off if it gives you an error, or if it lets you put it in with the 0, then all is well. But it will give you the prompt to put it in a certain format. And right now it is accepting it for me. So on the bottom here, the attachment A will only show up once you start to put in a partner. Obviously, if you don't have a partner, you can't put in letters of commitment from your partners. So that's an intentional choice here. So again, that won't show up until you actually enter in a partner up here. And then make sure that you're also selecting, how this partner is going to interact with you. Are they going to be a subrecipient or a partner, or are they going to provide match or in kind? And the option, you can choose both in this row as well if you have a partner that is providing both match and in kind support. Okay, so with attachment A, again, make sure you're combining all of your letters of commitment into one PDF and then attaching here. If you hit attach, it's upload a file, select a file, hit done. Pretty self-explanatory right there. And then 3.6, we have another narrative field. Again, the narrative troubleshooting tips apply that were up on page 6, I believe, of the application instructions. So we're going to skip ahead now to section 4 of the attestations. Both this page and the application grant guide go into some detail talking about the different attestations. The program can't advise you on these attestations. You're going to have to get these questions. If you have any questions about these, you're going to have to consult either legal counsel or some other authorized representative of your organization to answer yes or no to these questions. And then be sure that you are also verifying that any partners or subrecipients can answer yes to the attestations as well. We will be verifying that with the information that you provided up on section 3.6. So you notice the last page is the signature page. Again, here you're having the option to adopt a signature. You can choose your own signature here. You can draw a signature. You can select different styles on this option here. So you want to do a different brush script or print. This is totally up to you if you've never used DocuSign before. Fill in the name, title, phone, email, again, for the grant preparer, and then we'll hit finish. Since I haven't filled this out completely, I can't hit finish. It'll give me a bunch of errors, but when you hit finish, you're going to get this redirect to the DOA page. Again, this is by design. It is not a error. It's just redirecting you back out to DOA's website. If you have an authorized representative who needs to sign, at the point where you hit finish, it's going to be sent off to the authorized representative with that same review and sign email that I pulled up earlier. It is your responsibility to make sure that that person signs before the deadline. This email has been very consistent in being pretty quick to get to people. I'd say no, there 1 or 2 minute delay. But this is one reason to get your application in early, to make sure that you're giving that person adequate time to review and sign that document before it is officially submitted. If you did not have an additional authorized representative sign off, then it is completed. You should receive then a copy of your application along with a routing slip that shows when your document was officially submitted with a timestamp. Those are both going to be available in that email, and that is confirmation then serving as confirmation by the program that your application was received. I will say that this slight caveat, when the application portal gets overwhelmed, such as the day of the application closing, that email has sometimes been delayed. So the email confirmation to you will be delayed, but again, that routing slip will show the official submission time. So another reason to get your application in as soon as possible to be sure that we have received the application. Just looking through the instructions again really quickly. So another reason to get your application in early is if you find an error in your final submission. And it happens sometimes, you know, we see zeros, extra zeros coming in on the budget, somebody's emails incorrect. Those types of things happen. We have a process for you to withdraw the application. You'll need to email the workforce innovation at wisconsin.gov, which is coming to the DOA side, to withdraw. And you can do this at any time. You don't need to do it immediately. You can wait until after you've submitted your second application to withdraw, but we need to know that your first or your incorrect application is no longer valid. So you'll need to send us an email that has the submitter's name, email address, and submission date and time so that we can count that as a void application. And again, if you are to resubmit, that needs to happen before the deadline. All right, so the second optional form that is available is the DOA form 3027, the designation of confidential and proprietary information. This is a very specific form, and it is only if you are providing information on this application that meets one of these criteria down here as a trade secret, which is information derives independent economic value, actual or potential, from not being generally known to and not being readily discernible by proper means by other persons who can obtain economic value from its disclosure or use, or information that is subject to efforts to maintain secrecy that are reasonable under the circumstances. All of these applications are subject to open records laws and may be released if we receive an open records request. So this form would protect any trade secrets that would be provided by you in your application. This is not something that we can use to mask anyone's identity. It's not something that we can use to mask the general content of your application, but it is something that will be reviewed by the legal team if you submit it to discern whether or not your application does contain trade secrets. I'll go ahead and pull up that form really quickly to just show you what it looks like. Again, similar landing page as before to get to this page. But the 3027, very simple. You'll need to provide what page or section the information is located on in your application, and basically a general reasoning as to why that is a trade secret. Most people will not need to do this. And I would probably advise you not to do this or not to provide trade secrets in your application, but that is totally up to you in filling out your application. And with that, I think we can go ahead and hand it back over to Trenton. If you have any questions, follow-up questions, feel free to send those over to Rachel, and we'll do our best to address them at the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That's really helpful. In terms of just wrapping up a couple last key points, we do want to say that when you're filling out the forms on the application, if you do go over the character counts and include more information, we won't be able to see that as part of the review process, so we won't be able to score any additional comments that are included in that. And then also, if there's an application that does get submitted after the deadline, even if it's due to a technical glitch, we won't be able to accept that as part of the review as well. But just following up on Ashley's points on the scoring and each of the sections and how they have different points allotted to them, the purpose of this is to put more emphasis on identifying what is the workforce need and challenge that you're looking to solve, as well as the project description. So we want to make sure that we're weighting those a little more strongly. And then the third most strongly weighted is the partnerships and collaborations, really defining how it is that you're going to work together and utilize each other's experience to make the program a success. It's not that the other pieces of the application aren't important, but we want to make sure that we're stressing that there are different weights for certain sections. For the judging process that'll happen after April 18th, that'll get started fairly quickly. We'll be reviewing the applications that have been submitted. We may reach out to you if it looks like there might be an error in your application and give you a set amount of time, maybe a day or two, to respond back and provide us with any requested materials that may have been missed. But at the same time, we can't guarantee any extended amount of time or tell you in advance how much time will be allotted. But we do want to let you know that that's one slight difference from round one, where applications were disqualified if they weren't fully complete at that moment. The judging process will begin from that deadline date on through May of 2022, and then award announcements will happen again in early summer. For those who do receive the grant awards, you will be contacted by the Department of Administration to set up a reporting process, and that'll be based off of the different phases in your application as you defined it, which goes to both the different phases of your project as well as your itemized budget and expenditures that you have. In addition to itemizing the expenditures, you'll also be asked to potentially report on, how is the progress happening, what's going on, and where are you on your timeline, as well as the number of participants served and the demographic information on those participants. However, there may be additional reporting requirements that are needed either through Department of Treasury recommendations and needs from us, or specific to the needs of your program that might have slightly different measures that we feel are important to track. With that, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I'd like to just turn it back to Rachel to see if there's any questions that have come in while we've been presenting.
You got it. Can you elaborate a little bit more about the match requirements, and if there's more details on the percentage, and does it need to be shared equally among subrecipients, or and another way to phrase that would be, do subrecipients all need to have a match, or can it just be the overall partnership?
Ashley, is that something that you can speak to from the application standpoint?
As far as I'm aware, there is no requirements that the match be any percentage, that there is a prescriptive match percentage, but we can take that back to our legal team. And I'll say that this is a competitive program, so to some extent it is whatever your partners can accommodate. And if Trenton can go back quickly to the scorings of sections, you'll see partners and collaboration is 20 points in this. So pretty substantive portion here. So it's flexible from our perspective on how those partners are equated, but there may be others who have different partnerships who score higher in this category. And I would refer back to the scoring here, as well as the grant app guide and the rubric for more details.
And I can just jump in, Trenton, this is Danielle from
Yes.
GWG. Just to reiterate, no, there is no required match component. However, as Ashley said, showing that investment and commitment by the partners is reflected in the rubric. And again, part of that sustainability of how is this program going to extend past the grant period. We want to see that the work that's being done will continue either in the community or else statewide. So that all can be reflected in any match contributions.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Next question, is there a format or sample that we have for a letter of commitment from partners?
We don't have a letter of commitment sample that's available online. So if you have a template that you've used in the past that can address those needs, ultimately what we're looking for is making sure that your organization and its subrecipients are committed to the responsibilities and the budget costs and budget of the project that you're proposing, and ultimately to make sure that there isn't one person proposing a project and the other organizations aren't aware of the needs that will come out of that if it is awarded. So making sure that's all communicated in your letter.
Makes sense. These might be quicker questions, yes or no, but is there a minimum requirement to meet the definition of regional partners, or is that up to the applicant to explain why it's a partnership or what that looks like?
Exactly. It's fully in how you define your program and your partners. So we're just looking to understand who's involved versus having it specifically defined in any way.
Mm-hmm. So it could be multiple counties, it could be multiple cities, it could be a city with partnerships within that city.
Exactly.
Okay.
It depends on the scope and how you define your area, but especially the scope of the project.
And then if a grant applicant lists a partner, is it okay that the partner maybe shows up on somebody else's application as well? Can they be listed multiple times?
Yes, yeah, that is a possibility, and that kind of goes with the fact that a certain organization can apply for one program in round one and another in round two. But ultimately, one note we'd like to make is that any subrecipient or organization that applies is still limited to the budget constraints of $10 million total. So if they were a part of a different application that's awarded in the same round or in the previous round, you'll want to make sure that you're not being capped by previous awarded funds.
All right. Can a for-profit apply?
For-profit organizations can apply. They can't technically apply, but they can be a subrecipient on an application. The applicants need to be governmental body, nonprofits, and or Indian tribes.
Are public institutions considered a government agency or nonprofits?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah. Are higher institutions of education, colleges, universities, tech colleges, Are they a government agency or nonprofit?
If it's the actual institution itself, it would be a part of the government agency. But if they have if they're filing under a nonprofit as part of that agency or that institution, then they would file as a nonprofit.
Yeah, this is very organizationally specific, so it depends on the organization.
It sounds like there's a lot of thought and partnership that needs to work out ahead of time before applying to kind of work through some of these answers. So some collusion in a good way, cooperation might need to happen before you get to the application portion. We've got time for one more question. And can you elaborate a little bit on what workforce training is that eligible? For example, if there are staffing or labor shortages due to COVID for EMS or firefighters, could that be an eligible project training to get more people in that workforce?
Yes. So training can be or is a part of it. So it could be upskilling or reskilling existing labor that you have. It could be bringing new people into your industry. We do have some awards in round one that we're doing that as well as early as reaching people in high school to start training them there. But that is definitely a part of it.
All right. In the interest of time, I'm just going to make a couple more closing announcements. One is one of the questions I got most frequently is, will this be recorded and shared? Yes, it is being recorded. It will be shared. When you go to the main website for the program itself off of WDC, and I'll put that link in there again, it will be posted in the next 24 hours, if not sooner. And I will also ping all these participants when that does go live in our thank you email. The other question, excuse me, that I got frequently is, what happens if you didn't get to my question? So just know that I've been noting all of your questions here, and there are some that we did not get to. There's two things. I'll be passing these along to our subject matter experts that you've already heard from, and they'll be able to respond to you if they can. And then additionally, I just put in the chat. Still have questions? You have the email there for workforceinnovation@wdc.org. Sometimes there's questions that frequently happen about why somebody didn't receive something, or as was sort of alluded to earlier, like we can't advise you on legal matters, things like that. So the answer may be that we can't help you, but you will hear back from somebody depending on the question. For that, any other closing remarks, Trenton, before we say goodbye?
Just one last thought. The workforce innovation at WEDC email is a great one for reaching out if you have questions as you're preparing your application. Please do reach out to that, but I do want to note that we expect that it's going to get a very, very highly increased volume over the next 2 weeks. We're going to do everything we can to respond to those as timely as possible. However, as we get closer to that deadline date, we can't guarantee in the last day or two, couple days, to make sure that we're able to respond to your questions in advance. So that just reinforces the recommendation to start submitting your application early versus waiting till that last day.
Good advice that we remember from all of our school teachers and parents. Get in there early, don't procrastinate. Thank you, everybody, for your time and expertise. Appreciate your participation, and hope to see you on our next call when and if that happens. Have a great Thursday.
Thank you.